All right. Hello, thank you everyone for showing. So a big thank you for you guys for showing up, and a big thank you to the Puget Sound Estuarium and of course the library for hosting these Discover Speaker events. We are the South Puget Sound Salmon Enhancement Group. This presentation today is going to be a little about future restoration projects happening in your community, and ones that actually have just wrapped up even just this week that we thought might take a little bit longer, but they have just finished up, so that's pretty exciting. So just a little bit more about me, although they did a great job kind of explaining it. I've been in outdoor education for about 4 years. I have my environmental science degree focused in geoscience, which is geology. You may not know, but that's a lot of geology goes into salmon. I've been with South Puget Sound Salmon Enhancement Group for 1 year. And kind of what I focus on is Kennedy Creek salmon viewing field trips, which I know we have one person here that's been on one of the field trips. Salmon in the Schools program, where we actually bring chum salmon eggs to schools, and the children get to watch them raise up to fry stage, and then they release them back into the local streams. That helps with salmon populations as well. Now that it's no school, or I guess school just started back up, but in the summer when there's no school, I get to do a lot of fish surveying, habitat surveys, and I also help with construction reporting, because a lot of our staff members actually do multiple projects at one time, and you can't be at 2 places at one time. So I will go and help them and make sure everything construction-wise is going well. So again, just a little bit of background. We were formed by the Washington State Legislature in 1990. We are one of 14 groups called RFEGs, which stands for Regional Enhancement Groups. This is kind of a map of all the different ones in Washington State, and we are number 5, kind of right in the middle, which is pretty nice. We have 8 staff members and 9 board members, and then our mission statement is protect and restore salmon populations and aquatic habitat with an emphasis on ecosystem functions through scientifically informed projects, community education, and volunteer events. So this is a map about the different watersheds. So when we do restoration projects, we don't really divide it up between like city or county. We think about watersheds. So imagine if it starts raining, where's all that rain going to go? And that's kind of what a watershed is. So if it starts raining down in Deschutes area, all that rain is going to be in that area. All that water flow is going to be in that area. So when we do restoration projects, we think about watersheds. So today we're going to be focusing on the kind of red one up top, which is going to be Kennedy Creek. And then you have that orange one, which is going to be the Deschutes. And then, of course, I would say the second biggest one, which is going to be in the Nisqually. And we're going to be talking about the Nisqually first. So Nisqually watershed. This is a beautiful photo of the Nisqually and actually the Michelle coming together. I'll be talking about one completed triple F double P, and I will explain what that is here in a second. And then I will be talking about what is a lower and middle OHOP restoration. So what is a triple F double P? I think this is really important to share, because if you are a landowner who might have a creek or a river in your area or know someone, triple F double P stands for Family Forest Fish Passage Program. It's actually a grant program through Washington State, where if you do have a river or a fish passage or a stream on your land, you're actually in charge of it, to making sure it's like up and running and it's still in good condition. But some of these programs, or to replace, let's say, a culvert, can be a lot of money. So you can actually apply through this grant program, and South Puget Sound Salmon Enhancement Group might just so happen to be your project manager. And what we do in that situation is that we help with all the permitting, help with design, concept designs, hiring all the construction people, all the engineers. So that way the landowners do not have to stress about it. They just apply for the grant, they get it, then we kind of take over and help kind of just everything flows smoothly. So this is the triple F double P that just finished up in the Nisqually watershed. This was at Murray Creek. The top photos is kind of like the middle construction stage, where they had to dig out everything. So something important to note is that we do block off both sides of the creek, so no fish can come in. We collect all the fish in this area, and this one in particular, there was a lot of crawdads and a lot of lampreys, but we didn't see any salmon. So we collect them, put them all downstream, make sure no water can flow through. And then this one, we put in a giant box culvert. So on the bottom photo, that is what a box culvert looks like. It also acts as a bridge, so that's the way the landowner can still get to the other side of the property. And then that little metal circle right on the other side was what was originally the culvert. So you can see how much that was probably like, getting rusty, degrading. It got smushed because there was another one that was actually completely flat just from the landowner driving over. So now you can see how much more like fish can pass through. Or if a log does fall, it's not going to completely block all fish passage. Alrighty, and then to talk about the lower OHOP. So the top photo is from 2009, bottom photo is from 2025. One thing about restoration projects is that they don't happen overnight. A lot of our projects started 20, 30 years ago, and they do take this long, kind of just like how a tree doesn't grow overnight. Trees take a long time to grow, so restoration projects take quite a long time to develop. So the lower OHOP is kind of now just finishing up. What we did is that we created a new channel. So if you see on the bottom photo, there's a nice, beautiful channel that's like really bendy and it's not super straight like in the top photo. So salmon really like bendy rivers because it helps kind of slow down that water. And it also increases how many miles the total river is, which more miles of the total river is more miles of salmon potential habitat. Another thing that we did in this project was that we added a lot of wood to help create dams, or we call it an engineered log jam, which I will talk about a little bit later. And then we planted over 100,000 native plants, which you can see on the bottom photo, I think are coming in quite nicely. And then something kind of unique that we do at South Puget Sound, which I think is really cool, is that it takes a lot to put a lot of wood into a stream. So instead of like making a new road so we can get a crane and the trucks over, we actually do it via helicopter. So if you can imagine a helicopter driving over and then placing each piece of wood. So it sounds a little crazy, but I promise if we created a new road, it would actually destroy most of the habitat down below, which I would say looks really nice right now. Next is the middle OHOP, which is currently in design right now. The top photo is a really fun photo that it's actually hand drawn because a lot of design concepts go into mine. Of course, that isn't the final design. It will be more technical, but it's interesting that for our job, we do brainstorm a lot with engineers, construction people, all at a round table. And it's kind of just flowing those ideas of what will actually work here. And it takes time. You might scribble it out, be like, no, that's not going to work. Oh, this will work. Oh, we can't put the channel right through the person's house. That's not going to work. So it does take a lot of time and a lot of thinking. For the middle OHOP in particular, we are going to be doing some kind of changing the channel. So right now the channel, I'm seeing this, which has caused a lot of flooding over the road and for the people that do live there, which is not very fun. So we are going to try to move the channel or almost create like a side channel. So all the water isn't just flowing into these people's homes. This will help with salmon habitat because although salmon do like to make their way back home, they don't like to make it back to your home. And with floodplain reconnection. So what that kind of means is that, so with water in rivers, when they overflow, they like to spill out into a floodplain. What floodplains are really good at, because usually there's a lot of vegetation and just space for all that water to kind of absorb back into the ground. So if there's all the vegetation sucking up all the water, there isn't a lot of flooding. So that's why we like floodplains, because they kind of absorb all that water up. And overall construction goals for this one, because right now we're still in the process of getting everything moving, is to help increase habitat for salmon, decrease flooding, increase floodplain connectivity, improving riparian, which is kind of like the forest buffer in between the streams, and also just improving salmon habitat. So in these photos below, we'll start with this one. This one, you can see all the erosion that the river's kind of taking out. That's why we like riparian zones. That's where it's like almost like a mini forest with a bunch of vegetation and trees, kind of holds all that sediment in place. So the river can't just keep on taking it out. So this is a good example of something bad that can happen. It is just kind of like not a lot of heavy vegetation to kind of hold it in place. And then the second photo is what we like to call like an armory. So they look really nice, especially on someone's property, but because there is no vegetation, it does just keep on causing flooding because all that water will just keep on rising or going underneath the gravel. So just another example of how important vegetation is along the stream or river. And yeah, next we're going to be talking about the Deschutes watershed. I will be talking about what an LELJ is because I've been talking a lot about wood and the importance. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll be talking about a project that we just finished up, which is Deschutes River Mile 21. And I'll be talking about our really big project happening in the upper Deschutes where we are doing restoration on 14 miles of Deschutes. So that's a pretty big project. And then that's just a lovely photo of the Deschutes. So what is an ELJ? That's an engineered log jam. So top photo is a really great example of how technical it can get and how much kind of like engineering and concept design goes into it. So we don't just place logs into the river. We do place them in a very detailed way, which is why it's kind of nice to do it by helicopter because they do place them in a certain manner. Photo below is a great example of what it can kind of look like. Although the logs may look very ununiform, very randomized, they are placed in a certain order. So they're important because they create habitat. So little baby salmon need a place to hide. So they like to hide within the log jams or within like the roots in the log jams. So they hide from predators. It prevents erosion. So if there's a lot of logs in the water, they kind of hold the bank in place, like how we saw in the last photo. There wasn't a lot of wood there, so it's just eating away at the bank. Helps slow it down too. So we realized that, beavers were actually onto something. They did something pretty good. When beavers create dams, it kind of blocks up the water. So if this is like a dam or an engineered log jam, the water's going really, really, really fast. Kind of stops. All that kind of wood kind of makes it slow down. And if you're a salmon trying to swim upstream and the water's really, really, really fast, you're just getting tired and tired. But if it's nice, slow water, it's a little bit easier to go upstream. So we like to slow down the water and also holds sediment. So sediment's important because salmon are very picky. They don't like sand. They don't like anything too fine. Don't like anything too big. They kind of like, your technical terminology would be like gravel, which is kind of like a marble to a grape. And they like that because that's kind of like the size of the egg. And the gravel allows them, so when they hatch from their egg, there's space in between the rocks to swim out. But if it's all sand, they're kind of just buried. It's heavy. So it kind of holds all that sand sediment in place, so then it creates nice habitat down the stream or river. So River Mile 21 and the Deschutes is a project that we have been working on for a very long time, since the early 2000s. If you guys didn't know, Google Maps did not use color back in the 1990s. So this is the earliest photo we could get of the Deschutes, was from the 1990s. And then this is the updated photo via drone from 2004. So this was a restoration project at River Mile 21. The land is owned by the Center for National Lands Management. Our goal was to add more stream components that will offer salmon refuge, such as log jams, and to help slow down the water to give them rest. Other goals include helping trap fines, create cold water, and allow kind of more reconnectivity of the floodplains. So in the past, this area used to be kind of like a seller's land where it might have been used for farming and cattle. And what that kind of means is that in the first photo, you can kind of see like the remnants of kind of like the cattle that might have still been there. And now land has been bought out, and now it's kind of still regrowing right now. And it's interesting to see the difference because in this photo, the river only goes along right here. And this one, you can see how it's almost has split in two and how to create like its own floodplain. So if it does overflow, it just goes back into the groundwater and most likely back into the stream. So in this one, as we talked about engineered log jams, we put 8 large engineered log jams, and we created a 100-foot riparian buffer. So that's what all the tree growing is. Hopefully within 20 years, we can get an even better photo of all the trees that have grown up. But again, restoration takes a pretty long process. And then, but this stream in particular, it was really nice because in the Deschutes, you'll see endangered species like fall chinook, coho, and winter steelhead. You'll also see rainbow trout and fall chum. And then for the upper Deschutes, I would say this is probably one of our biggest projects we have taken on in a while. A lot of these big projects have to be taken on at different phases. Our first phase has been fully funded. The reason why we are doing this in 3 phases is because it's over 14 miles. It might not seem a lot, but for river miles, that is a lot of coverage. I just got done doing surveying and habitat out on the Michelle, and it took us 5 hours to walk 1 river mile. So 14 miles is really incredible that we have that opportunity to be able to help restore. This is an awesome concept design of just a portion of the Deschutes that we are going to be restoring. And again, a lot of it is engineered log jams. So they just do so much. As I said before, I keep on repeating myself for every project with sediment, predator place for the fish to hide from predators, but it really does just come down to beavers were really onto something. We kind of taking that away, and how do we put it back in? So within that 14 miles, we'll be putting in 13,000 trees via helicopter, which will, of course, improve stream habitat, increase complexity of the stream, which just means help like make some more bends into the stream, increase floodplain connectivity, and sediment management. And then, of course, Kennedy Creek. So a little bit about Kennedy Creek is that we co-own this place with Squaxin Island, DNR, Fish and Wildlife, Green Diamond, and then I did forget to add Mason County Conservation District. So Kennedy Creek's really awesome because this is a restoration project where people can actually come out and see that we actually do. So again, a lot of our restoration projects are on like people's land, like homeowners. They might not want 3,000 students going out to see the fish spawn, but at Kennedy Creek, you can. So every November, we have students come out to Kennedy Creek where they can watch the salmon spawn. In particular, we have chum salmon. This is a photo just from last year, which was a really good year for chum salmon. This year, we have 3,000 kids already signed up. If you guys want to come, the weekends are open for anyone to come out. And we do have docents out there to give you a full-on education tour guide, which is really nice. We've been doing field trips since the early 2000s. And basically, we just teach about the salmon life history and the connection to the Squaxin Island tribe. And it's kind of interesting that Kennedy Creek was actually created by a man named Brian Abbott, which is now has his own grant name after him. The story goes that he came up with the design with a friend on the back of a napkin. So just a little fun fact. Some interesting things, if you guys ever been to Kennedy Creek, is that we're updating our platforms to make them more ADA accessible. Obviously, this is not a finished platform. They are still in the works, hopefully to be done by the beginning of November for all the field trips and when the salmon come back. There is also a giant meadow called Taylor's Meadow, and we are currently trying to think of ideas. So if any of you guys have any ideas what to do with a giant meadow, some of it has been, do we change it into like a camas meadow? Do we add more parking? Because currently there's no parking at Kennedy Creek. Do we add an extended boardwalk trail, kind of like at Billy Frank Jr., from a maybe parking lot down by the road all the way up to the salmon trail? And then we're also, so this photo on the bottom, if you cannot tell, there is a culvert hidden in that photo. There's just so much debris. So our plan is to put in a bridge there. So that's kind of like a good example for the triple F double P projects for the landowners. So a lot of their culverts do look like this, which is very hidden. So that's kind of like the reason why we do it. It's a good example of what kind of a not so good situation could be. And then if you are interested in volunteering for Kennedy Creek, docent training will be on October 25th, starting at 10 a.m. You don't need to know anything about salmon. we'll teach it to you. We are looking for volunteers both on the weekdays and weekends. Bring chairs, dress warm, and then we will be providing lunch afterwards and giving out some docent swag, which this year is blankets, and I just got them in today. And then if you guys have any questions or just want to stay updated with us, feel free to write down my email. Check out our website, which we are going to change up to make it more updated, our Facebook and Instagram, which we share a lot of events like this one today. So thank you so much, guys. Yeah.
Huge project you mentioned, like the 14 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to do a lot of collaboration with landowners for that one in particular?
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of landowners, and I think some of the land might also be owned by like DNR or the tribe, which does make it a little bit easier, just as in it's not going to be someone's home every single half a mile or so. But yes, we do always make sure to landowners. We won't do anything until we get in yes from the landowners as well, which can slow down the process just because it might be hard to call 100 landowners just to explain to them what would be happening. But I would say almost all the landowners are very willing to be like, yes, we would love to help the salmon population. And usually it isn't right next to their house as well, which also helps. But yeah.
Kennedy Creek collaborating with Green Diamond, that could be.
So yes and no. So it's actually all owned by DNR. So have you ever been to Kennedy Creek? DNR owns the preserve, which is kind of the estuary. And then there's like the Kennedy Creek that does flow past a landowner, but they're very nice and they love everything that we do. And then most of the land's actually owned by DNR. Green Diamond owns more of like the forest land kind of up the way. It does get pretty close to them, but DNR has we kind of want to preserve this area because back in the 90s, there is due to kind of not strict fishing rules, populations went down to below kind of around 1,000, and now they're up to 20,000. So it's kind of more like a preserve restoration site that we just allow people in the public to see something amazing that we do and how co-management with DNR, the state, us, and especially the tribe. It's a great way to show how all of us working together can create a really special place for everyone to come and see. Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you get the plants from for restoration projects?
Good question. So, I know for willow in particular, a lot of our coworkers actually just have willow in their backyard and they'll just go and cut it and plant them themselves. If you don't know, you can just cut willow and just plant it. We'll do like the tree buys or the seed sales. Like I know Thurston County does a big plant sale. Pierce County Conservation District. A lot of your conservation districts do just sell trees and plants. And sometimes we talk to like land trusts or maybe some of the tribes are going to cut down a couple trees. And especially for the large tree projects, be like, hey, we'll buy some trees off of you if you're going to cut them down and sell them. We'll buy some as well. But yeah.
On that vein, do you guys only do, or do you do all native plants that would be in the ecosystem? Are you like looking for invasive those that come in, or like?
Yeah, so one of the projects that I didn't mention in here is called DRR, which is Deschutes River Ranch. And that one in particular, we're just kind of keeping our eyes on right now because it's also owned by the county. And that one in particular, we're kind of keeping our eyes on because a long time ago, we planted a bunch of trees. They're not doing too well right now. It used to be like a farming land and cattle. So I think all the nutrients kind of has left the soil. But we do keep our eye on if there's any invasives. And then we do have like a removal plan where someone will go out, try to remove the species that is invasive. And then we keep on trying to plant new plants and get that nutrients back in the soil. So hopefully they start to grow up more.
Yeah, can you talk more about the triple FPP program? Like how do homeowners get, about that? Is there a website or is there an app?
Yeah. So if you look up DNR, triple FPP, It'll take you straight to a website that talks all about the actual program and will take you to an application. The application itself, to me, does look a little, I don't want to say scary or complicated, but they do ask you a lot of numbers, if that makes sense. They want to know how much of the rivers in your land, how much land do you own. So just as a heads up, the process, I would say it is easy, but it might just take a little bit unless you know all the numbers off the top of your head. Yeah.
How many different salmon are there in the world?
In the world? Oh man, I don't know in the world, but I know in the Pacific Northwest where we live, there's 5 species, and sometimes people count 6. Kind of depends. Name them. So if you guys want to learn the salmon high 5, your thumb is going to be your chum, your pointer finger is going to be sockeye, your middle finger is going to be your king salmon because it's the biggest salmon, your ring finger is going to be your coho, which is also called a silver salmon. Then your pinky is going to be a pink salmon, which this year was also a pink year because they only come in odd years. That's a fun fact. Yeah.
Was there something you saw at one of the restoration sites that gave you so much hope for the future?
Yeah, I would say Kennedy Creek, but I'm also the education person, so maybe I'm biased. But I think it's really special to see so many people working together at one restoration site and it being a success story. So last year we saw 40,000 chum come back, which is double. And I was just talked to one of the Squaxin representatives today because I was actually just at Kennedy Creek before this presentation. And they said the numbers are actually doubled from last year. So seeing kind of like a successful restoration project, although I know it's not just Kennedy Creek, but it's kind of all the areas where we do work together with the tribes, with Mason, with Pierce, with Puget Sound Estuarium, where we do work and collaborate to not only educate the public, but to do actual restoration work. The numbers are showing, it's proving that it's working. Yeah.
What is the most common salmon?
Most common salmon this year or like ever? I think this year pinks were probably the most common salmon. If you guys went and saw the waters, you guys saw little fish jumping. 99% sure that you guys probably saw a pink just jumping out of the water because there was a lot this year.
Insane.
Mm-hmm.
You said there was some overlap with geology and salmon restoration.
Yeah, so geology, so kind of depends how much you go into geology. It could be hydrology, geology with rocks. I think the most one that comes to mind, especially with engineer log jams, is just sediment size in general. So if we do have to add more sediment into a project, because sometimes we do have to get everything A-okayed by like an actual scientist or Fish and Wildlife or permit wise, because we won't just throw sand into a river or to help put anything to grade. We do have to get like an actual size A-okayed, permit approved and everything. So yeah.
Last chance. Say a follow-up to that. So then where do you get your gravel and then like the right size?
Yeah, so we do just get our gravel just from whatever local construction site. Usually you do have the right type, size, and everything.
Do they
No. No, I would say it's very slim that we get donations like that, but that's why restoration projects cost so much money as well. So that's why we're usually the project managers, because we don't want the landowners to get in trouble because they bought the wrong size or the wrong type, or they bought sand instead of a marble size gravel. It does get very technical.
You don't want to change the account.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you to Jessica for taking time out of your evening for coming tonight to share about local salmon restoration. That is amazing that you guys take on a 14 mile project. Can't wait. Thank